questions. Okay. Let's pick Wayne.
Yeah. Well, I'm very concerned. I've thought a lot about this issue, having gone from being an anarchist pacifist to being a Trotskyist to becoming a revolutionary anarchist, and gone back and forth on this and thought about it. One issue that sort of, I think that part of the problem in the discussion is that I completely agree with Cindy's comments, that it's not like here's Marxism and here's anarchism, and then we have to relate the two of them. There are these two blocks. There's this enormous range of what's Marxism, going from what's Marx's Marxism and the potentialities there to other Marxisms. And again, there's a whole range of anarchisms. For example, the discussion about prefigurative stuff that was raised as a key issue here. That can mean at least two different things to me. One being, let's put it at the extreme. I'm going to put them in all or nothing. One being,
You usually do.
it's my dialect. One being thinking of it in a reformist sense. We're going to go out and not challenge the state and not challenge capital, but we'll build all the institutions and cooperatives and info shops and other good things. And these things will eventually grow a Proudhon strategy. The alternate credit union, it'll grow until it'll take over the whole society, and we'll have a utopia, a wonderful society, a place to stay and so forth. A different conception, and one which is, in my opinion, consistent with the libertarian aspects of Marxism, is to say what we want a society which is the self-managed society, self-managed of the working people and the masses of oppressed and so forth, people, and the way to get that self-managed democratic society is by organizing self-managed groups of working people and oppressed people to go fight for their rights and for a new kind of society. And that prefigures the new society. In the struggle, in every strike, in every mass movement, you're prefiguring a free society. Now, it's not all or nothing in reality, of course. I mean, I live in a housing co-op. And I'm a member of a union, and the housing co-op's a lot more democratic than my union. But there's a direction, there's an emphasis, and that can be, discussed. And in fact, one can go in a reformist direction, not contrasting conflict with the state, and the other can go in the direction of a revolutionary, conflictful thing. And either one can be seen as an integration of Marxism and anarchism, because they're both such broad, vague concepts.
It's very convenient for me. I am a Trotskyist that Wayne spoke first because I wanted to pose some of the problem of this disjuncture between prefigurative and strategic. And I'm not sure I have the right language. To hear the phrase anarchist politics, I sort of looked around to see who would shudder, and nobody did. So I think there's a basis, for trying to push the envelope a little bit. And Wayne has framed things in a very nice way by saying there's the possibility of a reformist anarchist practice. And I certainly want to congratulate the speakers who have, made fun of the very reformist character of these plenaries, where the largest perspective offered is how can we make Obama more like us? In reality, how can we get to be more like Obama? The fact is that I think, can come to grips with some of these questions, maybe not the answers right away, but the questions, if we ask, what are strategic questions? Okay, you don't want to see, and Wayne explained why it's not necessary to see prefigurative and strategic as, separate. But the question remains, how do you make them concrete? Because that's a big part of the dialectic. And there are examples, and anarchists and Marxists, when they fight, tend to often fight over, in a very superficial way, examples, Russian Revolution, Spanish Revolution. But the fact is, both of them reveal that the problem of getting rid of the bourgeois state and the question of what class generates the possibility of unifying all the people who are oppressed and exploited against that bourgeois state. And within that class, how do different elements of that class organize to present their ideas? I'll buy the notion that some of the time you need a plan and some of the time you don't. At least provisionally, I'll buy that. And somebody else said programs aren't all bad, but the fact is you can't, ultimately, you can't find a way, I think, to get rid of capitalism without plan, without organizations based on different perceptions of plans and strategy. And I think this kind of discussion can in fact go forward if we start to talk about some very strategic questions. I don't think it was because we have big differences in this room that the question of the state of class struggle hasn't been a function here. But the fact is, we in part talk about the Zapatistas, and I think people do talk about Bolivia because we don't really want to talk about the state of the class struggle here in America. Workers are getting their asses kicked, and we probably in this room would largely agree that the unions are a tool of capitalism, not a tool of the workers right now. The question is, where can a struggle come from that begins to shift the balance of class forces? That's a strategic problem, but we're not going to talk about it unless we're agreed on some notion of class agency. That is to say that the key to turning American politics around, the missing thing, is class struggle. And we know that we have a multinational, multiracial, women are 45% of the workforce, if not more, wage workforce. I mean, we're talking about a very different, it isn't your grandfather's class struggle that we're talking about here. So why don't we get started on talking about strategic problems of building a class struggle where we live? That will lead us into questions of, right away, of the relation to the state, how in fact effectively confront it without being co-opted by it. Very much a problem that's sort of assumed out of existence in the organization of much of this kind of thing. If there, I mean, it's a fact, Marxism has a real problem with reformism. Anarchism has, I suspect, a different kind of problem with it, alluded to perhaps by Wayne's remarks. But, we have to get out from under that, and I think the dialogue can be very fruitful if the starting place is, the question of how do we help build the class struggle in our own country, independent of the kinds of forces that dominate this kind of event.